Right. Should we get stuck into the meat and potatoes of this card? Because we've not got a lot of time today. Let's not mess about. Let's just get into the big fights, the exciting fights, and how we think they're going to roll. What do you reckon?
Of course, we are clarifying UFC 310. We're going to break it down all here for you, quick and fast, for a little bite-sized episode today, number 80. I think we should just roll in with what is my opinion, the people's main event, and it's definitely mine as well. Nate the Train Landwehr versus Superboy Dohu Choi. Banger fight. You're shaking your head as if you're saying, no, that's not a banger or a people's main event. And if anytime Nate the Train is gracing a UFC card, I will be seated watching and waiting for his victory. I don't know how you can't. I don't like that expression you're looking at me with.
You know what? I'll be real. It's a fantastic matchup. Does have fight of the night potential, 100%. Can see them getting bonuses and can see a fantastic speech on the mic. I'll give you that. But no, that is not the people's main event. The people's main event is Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Let's be real.
That's the boring pick, though. It's the boring pick, and maybe it's the right one. I have to say, it is a banger fight. And the odds I'm actually surprised by, because as I was looking at them just now, they have shifted drastically from one direction to the other. I saw only a couple of days ago that Ian Gary was a sizable favourite. Now that caught me off guard. Right, and not anymore, right? So now the UFC website have clearly updated their odds, and Shavkat is a minus 375 favourite.
Wow.
Which to me is absolutely mental. So there's definitely some money on Ian Gary there that I think I might be putting down, which is definitely a foreshadow for my prediction. I think Ian Gary can really dictate the pace. And is it over 5 rounds or is it 3?
Yeah, 5.
I'm not entirely sure. 5 rounds, even more so in my opinion, then I think Ian Gary will take over that fight, because I think when we see with Shavkat gradually to go into those later rounds, obviously not necessarily the championship ones, but he starts to fade a little bit. He gets a little bit sloppy with his technique. We saw that against Jeff Neal, and that's a man who clipped him pretty bad. And if it wasn't for an iron chin, we might have seen him being put away like many before him. And I think Ian Gary will just take over into those championship rounds. I think he's just more measured on the feet as well, more disciplined. The ground game is the real question mark for me, whether he can keep up with Shavkat. So that remains to be seen. But I like the odds on the Irishman here, I gotta say.
You've been in Thailand for 5 minutes and you've turned all edgy, trying to give me outsider fight of the night picks and whatnot.
It's not edgy. It's the right pick. It's the right pick.
It's fun. It's definitely fun, but the stakes are nowhere near what we're talking about here. And I'd have to disagree with you there, because I don't think the later this fight goes, the more it favours Ian at all, to be honest. I think the later this fight goes, the more tired both men are going to become, which means there's going to be more opportunities. And Shavkat needs 0.1% of an opportunity to finish the fight. And I think the longer the fight goes, just from a very basic principle, there's going to be more interactions and engagements. And as soon as there are, I'm always leaning towards Shavkat. So when I first looked at this fight, it's a tough one to call. And minus 400, by the way, is way too wide.
Mental, isn't it?
There's a lot of value in that line. A lot of value. But what I would say is, I do agree with you in regards to, I think Ian's going to be a little bit sharper on the feet. I do think he's very measured, like you said. I think that's a good word to use for him, because he doesn't get caught up in any sort of emotional play in the octagon. He's very present. He makes good adjustments. We saw that when he got knocked down against Song. So I do think there's a lot of value in a big underdog like that, which I actually think's insane. And I can see a world in 4.5 times out of 10 where he is just able to keep it at range, dictate the sort of pace of the fight, and for lack of a better word, jab and jog his way to a victory. I can definitely see that. But because of how opportunistic Shavkat is, I'm just leaning towards a 4th round submission. And I don't think he outgrapples him. I don't think he does. I don't know if he has. Yeah, I think he's able to just jump on something. He's happy to sit to his back on guillotines. And when he works against the cage, which I do think they're going to find themselves in that position at one point, he's just always attacking that neck. We saw it against Jeff Neal, and I'm going to go a 4th round rear-naked choke.
I can only really see this fight going to a decision, even though it's 5 rounds.
Really?
I just think both guys are so durable. And Ian Gary, he's very cerebral on the mat. I can't see him getting caught with the sub, personally.
But I don't
maybe
think
that's just how I envision it.
cerebral's a good word to use, right? Because I don't disagree with you. And he's not a Damian Maya, but he's definitely getting better. And I know MVP's a striker, but we still saw him dominate him in the grappling realm. But I don't think he's going to get submitted. I think he's going to get choked, if that makes sense.
No,
you know?
I get you. Yeah,
I don't think there's grappling exchanges. I don't think
Shavkat's going to make it ugly. That's what you're getting at.
This is my point, right? I think it's more Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira submission, a club and sub, rather than a sort of very methodical sort of sequence, if you like. So, what's your final pick for it, decision-wise?
Decision, Ian Gary. You say decision. I'm picking a decision for the future, Ian Gary. And I think on the back of a victory there for either man, if we're being honest, is a shot at the welterweight throne whenever Bilal Muhammad, of course, comes back. Again, that was the original matchup, was it not, with Shavkat?
Sure.
If it wasn't for Bilal's injury. So in the new year, UFC, let's put a number on it, 313, 312. We'll see the winner fight the man whose name we can never remember. But yeah, I'm excited for it for sure. It's going to be a good one.
And when you're talking title shots, there's another fight on the card that has a lot of title implications in it, and that's Volkov Gane. Now, I may have an unpopular opinion on this. So I want to hear yours.
No, I think I'm with you. You're saying unpopular opinion. I by that logic, I feel like you're picking Alexander Volkov to win this fight because I am as well. And I gave him the pick to beat Pavlovich because I think his style worked very well there. I don't think he's going to have an easier time with Gane necessarily, but I think he's going to do enough to get it done. I think we've seen him make improvements in his game over the time, and I think that is it a 5-fight winning streak now really reflects that. It's for me I think a lot of the questions that need to be asked are around the mental side of things, because I think the last time they fought, it was a pretty dominant performance for Cyril Gane. I think it was a 50-45 shutout, and I saw a good quote the other day, and I wish I remembered who it was by. I think it was a fighter or something, saying how much worse it is psychologically to be dominated versus even just getting knocked out brutally. It's far worse for the former to be on the losing end of the former. So that's a big question mark for me, is whether Alexander can really get past that. But he's been there and done it at the top level for so many years. He's had so many fights. I'm leaning towards the idea that it's not going to be a problem for him personally. Yep. And if he can stick at range, use his reach, which, sorry to just to finish off there, and I'll pass it back to you, is what we see a lot of times with fighters who have this gift of reach, height, and length. They never seem to utilize it as much as they should do. Volkov is a man that does, and he's going to have to use it to the utmost degree if he wants to get past a guy like Bon Yamin Cyril Gane. But I'm excited. It's a banger matchup, long in the making.
I don't know about a banger matchup.
I like it. I said, well, in the context of the heavyweight division, I think it is, because I feel like in a division full of fat slugging heavyweights who gas out in the first round, we've got two who are the highest technicians, in the game. So I'm invested personally.
The interesting thing will just be to see where Cyril Gane's at, really, because he's such a freak athlete and he's so talented. His Muay Thai is so good. Where's he at? What adjustments has he made to his game? Is he going to look to have a similar game plan? Is he going to look to show level changes? Maybe he's not going to look to try and grapple 5 rounds. I don't think he would have the cardio to use that sort of different system, if that makes sense. But would he look to at least show it to start opening up the rest of his game? Because he does have a bit of jiu-jitsu. People do forget that. He has got some nice subs.
Yeah, he's got good offensive grappling.
Necessarily have the best wrestling. So I know he's been working on that. Does he show that wrinkle? Let's find out. I just think Volkov is coming off a good amount of momentum. And I really just think whoever starts this fight, the aggressor, is going to win. It's going to be a short fight, 15 minutes. I think it goes the distance, whoever gets their hand raised.
As do I.
And I just think Volkov's going to start a little bit sharper, a little bit more confident, just coming off the wins that he is, more activity in the cage. But saying all of this, Gane is so talented, it wouldn't shock me if he sort of managed to nick 2 rounds at the start and then maybe lose the last and get his hand raised in a unanimous decision. But I'm going to lean Volkov in this one, for sure.
Yeah, I think if Gane shows up, he'll win that fight. I think out of the two men, who's got the more natural ability, the more talent, I think you have to go with a man like Cyril Gane. We've seen what he can do when he's at his best. But yeah, as you said, it's one of those things where Volkov's got the momentum with him. And it's been a little while since we saw Garn in the cage. It was against Spivak, and then of course before that there was an even bigger gap.
Spivak, yeah.
You know, since the loss to John Jones. So he hasn't had a huge amount of time in the cage. And I know people are going to make the debates about ring rust and whether it's a factor. That remains to be seen with a guy like Cyril Gane. So, as you said, though, I'm excited. I'm going with a Volkov decision. I agree. When I said earlier about them being technicians, I think in a lot of ways, as much power as these guys have at heavyweight, their styles lean towards perhaps more of a decision as a result. And I agree with you, Volkov via decision. And there was a matchup which we actually briefly mentioned on the cut episode, which lasted about 10-15 minutes before a myriad of technical issues, and that was Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling, which I think 99% of the global MMA fan base would agree does not deserve to be on the preliminary bout in the slightest. And I don't know if that's a power play by Dana White. It wouldn't surprise me. We know what kind of man he is. I don't. He
does not like Aljo. Let's be real.
He doesn't. Yeah, that's where I was leaning with it. And I don't know if that's the reason. That's not something we're going to delve into. I think we've got to look at this matchup for what it is. At the end of the day, it's not on the pay-per-view, so anyone can watch it. So maybe that means more eyes. Maybe it's an opportunistic thing.
For sure.
Who knows? But we've got an undefeated man in Evloev, who perhaps shouldn't be after his Arnold Allen fight, which we said the other day, versus the man who, of course, has been there and done it all 3 times over, defending his bantamweight championship, and now looking to be a 2-weight king up at featherweight. And I think you're in agreement with me here that he's a very good chance of doing so. What are you saying about this one?
I give the edge in grappling to Aljo, to be honest. I give him the edge in grappling with anyone in that division, including Ilia Topuria. As good as I know Ilia Topuria is in the wrestling and the submissions, to be perfectly honest, 7 straight subs in his pro first 7 fights.
Yeah,
so
that surprised me.
That good.
When I was researching for a video on him. Mate, sub after sub after sub.
Different subs as well. Anacondas, guillotines, arm bars, rear naked chokes. Not just the same one every time. So I still go Aljo, though, just because he's different to everyone. His movement's different. His techniques are different. His submissions that he chases are different. You know, he's got a Sulev stretch on his name. And he has chances like that more often than not because he obviously always goes to the backpack. So things like that will be there for him. So I don't think this is going to be a grappling affair. I think they'll cancel each other out. I do believe Evloev has more tricks on the feet, but I think that Aljo's just going to have the edge on the feet in regards to his funkiness and his setups and the way that he shifts stances to his level changes. And at featherweight now, he's a little bit bigger and he can eat a little bit more and he's more comfortable in his skin. He just looks a lot more settled,
that's a good point.
A lot more grounded. Just in his striking, you go against Calvin Kattar, and I don't care if it was a boring fight to the majority and it was on the biggest card. It doesn't matter to me. You watch the way that he set up his takedowns with his striking. I would say that was one of his best ever performances, to be honest. Up there with obviously the Corey Sandhagen. So Evloev is just that guy, and he just doesn't lose. I know that sounds obvious and stupid, but if you actually go back and look at some spots that he's been in, stupid things like ninja chokes against Arnold Allen, deep knee bar, I think it was. You go back early in his career, he's been in some spots and he just doesn't lose. And he reminds me of Mohamed Makayev in a sense like that. But with all of that said, I'm just edging towards Aljo. And I think this could be razor close. I think this could be a split decision.
I'm actually pretty much, I say pretty much, I am exactly in agreement with you there. I think it's going to be a very close fight. Maybe a boring one. Judging by both men's track record, I think that's a fair shout. And I don't really want to use the word boring because it feels a little bit harsh. It's just the way the chips are falling with their styles. That's how it tends to go. Yeah. Let's let them down a little bit softly with that phrasing instead. But I'm in agreement. I think Aljamain Sterling might just pip it by decision. And you made a good point there about him being more comfortable in his own skin. And I think that goes for his entire sort of him as a person since moving up to featherweight, whether it's inside and out of fighting. I saw a picture the other day of the physique comparison of him at 135 or 145. I'm sure you saw that, but it blew my mind. And he was replying to people in the comment section of the Instagram post about it, sort of bolstering the idea that he was, doing much better, feeling much better. It just feels like that encompassing that with the idea that he's free of the weight of expectations of being a champion. There isn't really much expectations, especially now he's at the back end of his career by most standards. He can just cruise gradually up to that title run. And a good comparison I make is a guy like Davison Figueiredo, who I know is just coming off a loss now, but we were speaking of him in a similar conversation as a guy who's just making his way up the ladder again. He's been there and he's done it, and he's trying to do it again in a new weight class with a new challenge. And for a while there, we were talking to him in that conversation, and if Aljamain Sterling gets the win come tomorrow night, we will continue to do so. And as you said before about there being title implications for some of the fights on this list, this is definitely one that's amongst it too. I wouldn't say for certain that both men would get a title shot coming off a win, but they wouldn't be far off it.
By the way, Davison Figueiredo's weight cut is tough still at 135 pounds.
Yeah.
Saw him all around fight day in his towels and what. Really nice bloke, by the way. Always really polite. Always says hello. Like, he obviously can't speak any English really.
I was going to say.
Has a nice demeanor about him, Has a really nice demeanor about him. So that
he does seem like a stand-up dude.
But just not a big guy at all. But just, it really looks like the weight cut is just as difficult as at 35, which is kind of insane.
That's a man who was making 125.
Well,
at championship weight as well.
You talk about making 125. This is a bit risky because we've got Pantoja Kaisakura, and people kind of forget this. Kaisakura hasn't been fighting at 125. They fight a little bit heavier in Ryzen. He's actually been fighting a little bit heavier than that. So I don't have any doubts that he'll make the weight, but I do have doubts about his ability to keep Pantoja off him for 5 rounds. Now, before I sort of give my overlook of this fight, what do you think?
It's a tricky one because, first off, before I even get into what I think, I just want to say, how many times have we said to normalize flyweight main events? Now we have one. So can I just say that? Because I cannot remember the last time we've had
how hated was
flyweight main event on a pay-per-view. Yes. I think the only other time we've had more hate was, we said something like heavyweights one time. I said
heavyweight should never main event, and I stand by that.
Yes, that's it, yeah.
What are people...
Hate we got on that.
No, right, I've got to go shortly, but I need to get into a rant on this because every single human being on that comment thread, and I never get riled up in comment threads, but it was so many consistent themes. They don't watch fights. They don't watch the UFC. They don't watch MMA. And they certainly don't watch it every week. Because if they did, none of them would be regurgitating the same rhetoric as the last dipshit that was messaging below them. Because it was so ridiculous. They're trying to sit there and say, you don't know anything. Heavyweights are where it's all at. This idea that heavyweights are powerful is wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah, respectfully, I love Mick Parkin. I don't want to watch that brother headliner card anytime soon.
No, it's this whole narrative, right, of we think of heavyweights because we watch heavyweight boxing and we think of these massive punchers. No, heavyweights in MMA are not massive punchers for the most part. There's about 3 big punchers in the heavyweight division. Big. And I mean just like put one on your chin and put you out cold. There's like 3 of them at best. At absolute best. And the champion is not one of them. Cyril Gane is not one of them. Volkov is not one of them. And I've already spat out 3 of the top. Curtis Blades, not really one of them. Like, I'm giving you the top 5.
Yeah, you're spitting.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I wouldn't even say Pavlovich is one of them. Maybe I'm going to get some flack for that. He's not a guy who puts your lights out with one shot.
It's true, though. It's true.
How many times does he land on you? There you go.
No, I said that on the build-up. He's a powerful puncher, sure, but he's a volume puncher at heavyweight. You're right. How many times has he one-shotted someone?
Yeah, I don't think he has.
Crickets.
I don't think he has. Yeah,
Crickets.
There you go.
Right, let's get into this breakdown. You got me all riled up. Good job I'm training after, because my flipping adrenaline is going through the roof.
Let off some steam, man. You're moving like Sean Strickland. Got to get rid of those, exercise those demons with the pad work. Maybe not to his level of insanity, but the way you're talking, you get me a bit scared. But yeah, Alexandre Pantoja versus Kaya Sakura. It's one of those where there's a lot of question marks, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know the answers or I know the intel around Asakura,
I
but
do.
he's a man. You sound like you do. Yeah, you do. You just said you do. yeah, you do. But the big question for me is I make a big point about this on here and on my videos as well, is that I'm a big believer in age being a big factor in MMA, and it's no more prevalent than in the flyweight division.
True.
Where the speed is the first thing you lose in MMA, and your reaction time, and those are two of the factors that are most important in a weight class like flyweight, because it's what gives you that edge. You know, power's the last thing to go. It's why we see heavyweights last longer. So careers tend to be a little bit shorter at flyweight, and Pantoja's, I mean, I believe so.
I think it's because they're not that good and they can get away with being there longer.
I mean, that is also true. Flyweights are far more technical. Yeah, it's true.
To be honest.
Good point.
I don't think it's a power thing.
It kind of encompasses my point, though.
I see what you're
saying.
saying.
That speed and reaction time is a factor at flyweight. And Pantoja now, I believe, is he 36 now? Or he's pushing it?
35, yeah.
35, 36. He's in that ballpark, which, you know,
yeah,
especially at the championship level, most guys wouldn't be holding the belt at that point in their career. So for me, it's always a matter of when that decline is going to start to hit, and the damage he's taken in his last few fights, it will add up. And maybe, just maybe, it will be tomorrow night that we see it be the difference maker against the guy like Asakura. I don't know for say, but I like Pantoja. I want him to keep winning, so I'm going to pick him by decision. I think he's just going to grind him down, as you said. It's a question mark whether Asakura can survive and hang over 5 rounds. And I'm kind of leaning towards that sentiment. I think Pantoja, maybe a late submission, actually. I'm going to switch that up, yeah. I'm going to go with the 4th round. Late 4th round submission, rear naked choke. He'll find it. That's his game, is it not?
I agree with everything that you said. Everything you said, and all of your qualms are echoed by myself. I always talk about timing, right? I always talk about timing. I always talk about moments. And just because someone loses a fight or wins a fight doesn't even mean they're the better fighter. And if you look at it on paper, skill set for skill set, I would say Pantoja is the better mixed martial arts fighter, especially in a cage, which is a big factor that people don't talk about, because Kaya Sakura doesn't fight in a cage, right? Which is a big part to the whole takedown element of the game, especially against someone like Pantoja who wants to push you against there and just get a hook in any way he possibly can. So we speak about the sort of Rachmanov approach, the way he got Jeff Neal. Pantoja wants to do all of that, right? Pantoja wants to do all of that and has done that. Did it to that fella in the flyweight division. That's the one, right? In a heartbeat. However, I'm going to speed run this prediction. However, the way that Alexander Pantoja likes to close the distance with his hands is quite squared up and is quite looping. Now, he could get his hands on Kaya Sakura, and I think he could get his hands on him early. And if he does when he's dry, it's going to be dangerous. But I think Kaya Sakura, I've heard some things of the training room in the grappling, which doesn't fill me with confidence. I'll be real there. However, I do think he'll be able to survive the round and keep it on the feet, right? At least to the second, at least to the third. And I think if you just rush your entries by a split second, Kaya Sakura is going to float backwards and stick a knee on your sternum, if not an uppercut, if not your face. And if it isn't a knee or an uppercut, it's going to be a straight right as he's floating back, boom, straight down the pipe. And as you said, these fights add up. 35 years of age in 5-round wars against the very best in the world at those frenetic paces adds up. And I just think this is going to be Kaya Sakura's moment. I think it's massive. Coming over from Japan, huge following, huge audience, UFC backing, and boom, just explodes on the market. And I think it's... I think Pantoja's just had his time. I don't think that's he's
also where I could see...
bad fighter.
Yeah, that's not the other avenue. I agree.
And I think he could win. And we could be sitting on a Sunday and go, yeah, it kind of looked how I thought it would look. And that's very, very possible. Yeah, exactly, and I think... And if I'm giving odds, I'm going 6.8 times out of 10. It looks like Pantoja doing what Pantoja does, but I'm backing on the 3.2 here.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking back. I've said this many times before about when you quoted the Sean O'Malley fight against Aljamain Sterling, who of course we mentioned
And I
earlier,
love
it being
Aljo.
his time. Yeah, of course, right? And it just felt like one of those things in the air where a guy gets it done. And the more you say it, the more I'm starting to believe it too. And for the sake of the division, from like a
Sure.
company point of view, I think having Askar come in in his UFC debut and win a championship belt might maybe undermine some of the standards to an extent. There might be questions about that, but when you think about the benefits that immediately outweigh a sentiment like that, in terms of tapping into, as you said, another market in Japan, which already is rich combat sports heritage, and really just bringing that to the UFC, think how mega that would be. Another Japan event there with Kai Sakura headlining. And hey, that means we get another flyweight main event. That would be awesome, right? So I'm kind of with you from a practical sense. It makes perfect sense, and it excites me a lot more to have Anu be bellowed out come the main event.
Prediction?
Saturday night. Yeah, tough one. I mean, I said 4th round rear naked choke. That's what I said for Pantoja, but you kind of make him. You do sell it well. I gotta say, you sell your takes well, and it makes me think. It makes me second guess. But that's why we love the game.
Right? I just paint a picture, and I use a few.
So I use a few videos
brushes.
Off the cuff. I ain't got the same level of. I ain't got the same flair and panache.
This is what I have to do. I don't get to
talking off the
sometimes.
rip. Exactly. We've got different skill sets when it comes to dressing up the fight game with embellishments and bells and whistles. But I think that's probably a little good place to wrap it up.
Wait. I haven't given my prediction.
Wait. Oh, you haven't?
Jesus, what, you're trying to wrap it up?
I thought you said the knee. You said the knee, and I kind of got a bit.
I haven't given rounds. I haven't given methods.
Final, but you didn't. You're right. All right, shoot.
No, I think it's going to look. I think it's going to look a little bit like Juan Archuleta in Ryzen. He sticks him with the knee to the sternum. I think it's going to be a right hand. I really do. I think he's just going to float back and put a right hand on his chin. And I don't think he's going to finish him, but I think he's then just going to go absolutely torpedo with his punches, kick him to the body when he's in turtle, and just beat him up. I think he's just going to beat him up and get a finish in the 3rd round. No later than the 3rd. If it goes later than the 3rd, I think Pantoja just takes it. But I'm going to go 3rd. And then I'd like to see Pantoja go to bantamweight and fight Davison Figueiredo. And then, one last mention, Brian Battle versus Randy Brown, because that's a banger.
Banger fight. As I was scrolling through there, I can't believe I missed that when I was scrolling through. What a fight that is. I talk about people's main event, that might just be the one.
Yeah,
in terms
really
of what could be fight of the night, I tell you what, anytime Brian Battle's on, I'm watching. That man is rapidly becoming one of the biggest stars in
fellow
the
casual
division. Is he?
Yeah.
What is he? The supporter of the page or in the DMs?
Yeah. Follow a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. I like that. Well, I'm a supporter of his as well, so I mean, maybe one day we'll get one there. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the dude. But yes, that is probably a good play. Do you want the predictions for that, or do we?
Nah, I gotta go, boy.
Nah, let's just pray it's a good fight. That's what I want to see. That's what Will wants to see. I think that's what all of you want to see.
I think he's gonna knock it out in the 2nd.
There you go. We'll go with that. I'm going to share the same sentiment. This has been the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 80, coming at you with a little bit of a shorter one. Let's enjoy the fights, and we will see you hopefully next Sunday. Yeah.
Oh, flipping hell. That's it.
There you go.